Hi, this is Julie with Beadaholique, and today I want to show you from start to finish how to make a Regaliz flat cork cord bracelet. I have a few examples right here of finished ones. And there's a lot of different things you can do with it. It comes in a 5mm and a 10mm width, and I'm going to be doing a 10mm here in this video, but just showing you a couple different options. So you're going to need your flat cork cord, and I have 9 inches right here, which is what I would want to start with. I'll tell you in a moment how I ended up with that. And then I've got a clasp, which has a glue-in recess on both sides. And then I've got 3 beads. In terms of tools, I've got a cutter, and I've got some super glue. I have a pen and paper because I want to show you some math on how I figure out how much I'm to cut of this. And I've got a ruler, and I have a bracelet mandrel. You're not going to need a bracelet mandrel because you're going to be doing this against your wrist probably, but if you do have a bracelet mandrel, it is handy. So first off, let's talk about how much Regaliz cord you're going to need to cut. So a 7.5 inch bracelet, which is pretty standard. That's not your wrist size. When you're doing these, you want your bracelet size, which is going to be larger than your wrist size. And you can see I'm just going to overlap this right here. So 7.5 inches on the bracelet mandrel, when you put it on the ruler, actually equals 7.25 inches. So that's our first number that we start with. So 7.5 inch bracelet. Move this out of the way so you can see it. You plus 1/4 inch just off the start without any beads. So that gives you 7 3/4 inch of the Regaliz flat cord that you're going to need. Now, when we add the beads, you just slide these on. They slip on. Some can be a little tighter than others, so when you're scooting them along, just inch them carefully. There you go. So when I put the beads around, that's also going to slightly change how much of the Regaliz cork I use. Because you can see they create a little gap. So it's to right there. And when I put this down on my ruler again, we went from 7.25 inches to 8 inches. So the beads added another 1/4 inch. So now we're at 8 inches. One thing that we found, which is kind of hard to explain, even if you were to have twice as many beads on here, it still seemed to only add about 1/4 inch. It was only when you really chocked it full that it started to increase that number. So, you know, don't feel like you have to order an extra like 4 inches because you got extra beads. You know, you're going to order more. I'm going to have you order more than what you think you're going to need anyways. But that is kind of good to note that double the beads doesn't necessarily equal double the amount here. So I've got 8 inches. And now we have to take into account the clasp. So the clasp has a little glue recess on each end. And the overall clasp measures 21 millimeters. And each recess is 5 millimeters. So since we've got it on each side, we have to times the 5 by 2, which will give us 10 millimeters. And we're going to subtract that 10 millimeters, because it goes in, from the 21, which gives us 11 millimeters. So now what we have to do, and I know this sounds really confusing, but this is just so you can figure out how much you're going to need to cut. If you're just doing it for yourself and you're measuring it against your wrist, you can do this a lot, more easily just by cutting down little increments. But if you're making them to sell or as gifts, you'll want to be able to do this math. Okay, so we need to take the 11 millimeters and minus it from 8 inches. Well, here we have inches, here we have millimeters. 11 millimeters is not quite 1/2 inch, and I want to err on the side of caution, so I'm going to round down. So I'm actually going to minus just 1/4 inch from my 8 inches, which gives me 7 3/4 inches. And the reason I did that is because I'm actually going to be cutting cork away to a lot for my clasp. So I'd rather err really on the side of caution here and round down instead of rounding this up to 1/2 inch, which would be like 12.5 7.5 millimeters or something like that. So 7 3/4 inches is what I want to cut. And remember, I started with 9 inches, and I start with 9 inches because whenever you're ordering the Regaliz cord, I want you to take whatever number you end up with, round up to the nearest inch, and add an inch. So I'd round up to 8 inches, and I'd add an inch, so I ordered 9 inches, just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to put this against my ruler, and at 7 3/4, I'm going to make a mark. And I'm not going to worry that I actually made a mark because this is going to go into the recess of the clasp, so we're not going to see it. I'm going to now take my cutter, put it over that mark, make sure my fingers are carefully away, cut it. Here we go. So that's 7 3/4. Now I'm going to put my clasp in it without glue. And I think this is going to be a little bit big because remember I rounded down on my clasp instead of rounding up, but I want to see how I did. And I'm going for a 7.5 inch bracelet. Put on the mandrel. Yep, it's just a little bit big. So what I can do is just very carefully cut away a little bit more. And cut very little at a time. Once you make a cut, it's permanent. You know, you're not going to be able to add more back in. So I want you to be cautious about that. Again, slip it on. We're almost there. And you'd just be doing this against your wrist if you were making this for yourself. Just a little bit more. And we're right there. We're at 7.5 inches. So now it'll be time to glue our clasp. And what you're going to do is you're just going to remove the clasp, take your glue, remove the cap, go ahead and carefully put a drop inside of the recess on one side of your clasp. Kind of swirl it around a little bit in there just to make sure it covers all the sides. Now go ahead, take one end of your flat cork, put it into the glue, and we're just going to hold it there for just about a minute. It actually doesn't take that long. Now when that side is done, we're going to repeat the same action on the other side. Go ahead, put a little glue in the recess, swirl it around a little bit just so it covers the sides, and then put your other end in there. Push them in nice and snug. You're going to just let that dry. And I'd say let it dry for 24 hours just to be on the cautious side. And that is how you make a Regaliz flat cork cord bracelet.